Welcome to Breaking the Couch, a weekly conversation demystifying what happens in and behind the therapy scene to support your healing journey. We are your hosts.
I'm Dr. Doughton, a licensed clinical professional counselor, a certified school psychologist, and a trauma specialist with Playfully Psyched.
And I'm Dr. Joe Harchi with Soft Heart Psychology, a licensed clinical psychologist.
We're here aiming to provide you with mental health tools to address the cycle of generational trauma across the age span, from infancy and childhood to adulthood.
For more information, visit our Instagram page at Breaking the Couch or our website, breakingthecouch.com. While we hope you love listening to and learning from our podcast, it's not a substitute for a relationship with a licensed mental health professional.
A funny story to tell you. So I have an older sister who I'm not going to say her name, but I have an older sister, and I had once sent her my bio for my website. And on my website and everywhere I post something about myself, I say, I'm a Black cisgender woman, and I'm identifying my gender. And she didn't know what cisgender meant, right? But the way she said it, I always think it's so funny. And cis, don't come for me. But she was just like, why would you need to say that? What is that? Why would you need to put that out there for everybody? Because I think she was assuming that cisgender was probably something along the lines of a sexuality that I was putting out there. And I just laughed, and I was like, no, let me explain first what cisgender means, first of all. And I was like, it just means that, I was signed at birth female, right? That's what they said. And I identify as a woman, so they align, right? And I was like, you're cisgender. I was like, mom is cisgender, right? Like
Here's some examples. Yeah.
Exactly. Like, we are cisgender. And she's like, okay, but why would you say that? And I was like, because I am also gender affirming, which means that people that come into my practice can be any gender that they are. I'm affirming for that. I am accepting of that. And it can create a safe space for them to know that what my gender is, how I identify, allows them to feel comfortable to then say how they identify, what's their gender, and that I'm not going to be critical over that, and can help them with whatever issues they have going on in their life, other kind of traumas and like that. So thinking about that conversation, and then I had another convo with a cousin who was just saying learning about gender has been, gender trauma specifically has been really enlightening for her. And she had a question. And so I'm like, oh, wow. So we haven't really talked about some of the basics of gender, sexuality, even though I know throughout episodes, we've kind of sprinkled in things about the LGBTQIA plus community. We haven't done some of the basics. So I thought, why don't we dive in today and do a little bit of that, and really explore some of the traumas that can be associated with gender.
Yeah, I just love that because I'm kind of smiling over here. I do love that you share your identities and that you put that out there. I do believe that that's part of what we've talked about in a previous episode of inviting in. And by saying, I'm Dr. Joe Harchi, I'm a cisgender woman, I am hopefully inviting in. And so when somebody wants to say, their pronouns or and we'll talk about what that is in the first place too, right? So I think that that's all part of inviting in rather than burdening or expecting people to come out. And again, if you are interested in that, there's definitely an episode where we talk more about the concept of inviting in from the book Invisible Man Got the Whole World Watching. Yeah. And I also want to say something similar around sexuality. I had a family member who said, wait, does bi mean that the person is going to have both a husband and a wife? And
wow, yeah.
okay, definitely not. That's fine too, but
That's a
that's not what that
relationship
is.
type, more love type, right?
Yeah, I
Okay, so
couldn't
I think
exactly get the whole gingerbread and the unicorn out for them. But we can talk about what we can kind of break down the gingerbread and the unicorn and kind of talk about the differences and how that shows up in therapy and life, inviting in this whole concept.
Yeah. And so I think my first disclaimer, at least for myself, is to definitely put out there that, right, because I am a cisgender woman, and I'm not the expert on other people's gender identities, but I can give just the basic understanding to people and basic definitions. Um, and then I think that people should, uplift the voices and experiences of people who are leading in this work and who are identifying in ways that are gender nonconforming, and that uh, have an even bigger platform, or better, lived experience in that can be good too. So just wanted to say that. Okay.
Absolutely. Mhm.
Okay. So maybe we start with, and again, this isn't going to be exhaustive because gender is fluid and there are new terminologies coming up, but maybe we start with gender and pronouns, and then we can maybe expand into some sexuality and our relationships types, and then circle in some with the impact of trauma. We'll see how this goes.
Absolutely. You know me, I go all over the place. So I'm already
I
like,
do
"Oh,
too.
I wanna tell listeners about all these traumas, these gender
Mhm,
traumas, and I wanna share with people about that." But you're right, let's back up, explain why do we even say our pronouns and
mhm,
that whole thing in the English language. Yeah, because there are
mhm.
other languages where we don't have to conjugate or say pronouns, and we can invite in other ways. But in English, yeah, we are
We
going
don't have to
to.
say pronouns in English. We do. We don't have to. It's not a gender. So English is not a gendered language, right? We don't have, so you think of like your French, your Spanish, your Romance languages, they are gendered languages where like there's a masculine and feminine article that goes with words. We don't have that.
Right, right. We're the ones choosing to say you guys, you girls, and
Mhm.
putting people in binary things and then excluding
Mhm.
people in doing that.
Mhm. Exactly.
Right. Good point.
Okay. So gender, right? Gender is conceptual, right? And some of the gender titles are man, woman, transgender. Some people will look at like two spirit as a gender identity. There's gender non-conforming as a gender identity, and there's gender non-binary, right? And that's just a few that are coming up to mind right now, right? So those are conceptually all in the same category. So we say like, oh, I'm a woman, right? That is a gender classification. And I want to say that because I guess the one thing that we didn't talk about was sex. So with sex, usually people are looking at chromosomes and or um, reproductive organs. When they assign a sex at birth, they say female or male, they're usually just looking at external reproductive organs, like external sex organs, right? They're not doing any chromosomal testing. They're not looking at anything to that. But we can look at those things and kind of see, okay, some people will have no ovaries and they'll
Mhm.
have testes, but then they'll also have a uterus. Like there's all these different combinations of reproductive organs that can exist. And those people, there's like at least 6 different sexes, and I don't remember them all off the top of the head, but the ones that we typically talk about are female and male, right? But then there's intersex, and intersex would fall in the category of
A
intersex.
lot of folks won't even know. Maybe they'll try to reproduce or something later, come into some barriers, and then find out that they, you know, are XXY chromosome,
Mhm. Exactly.
or that they, are intersex in some way, hormonally, chromosomally, and had no clue. Mhm.
Exactly. And so where the confusion starts to come into play is that for, I guess, or some of the discrimination start to come into play with these two is that your your sex that was assigned to you, right? Or the sex that chromosomally doesn't have to align with your gender,
Right. Hmm.
right? So even if you want to say that the sex or chromosomally someone is male, right? They can still be gender identify as a woman. They can still be a woman.
Right.
And that's I think where people start getting really confused. But if we think about, if we're just looking at chromosomes or reproductive organs, why would we need to know someone's chromosomes or reproductive organs in order to be able to call them a woman, man, transgender, whatever, those things, right? So that's where it starts getting, where we layer in those societal discriminatory practices that are unnecessary.
Right. And because we know that before colonialism, there was a gender expansiveness just naturally to folks. We
Mm-hmm.
know that there's all these actual different types of ways of being. And if you really think about it, and you don't think about, no, things have to be this way or that way, you
Mm-hmm.
can probably think of a bunch of people that you grew up with that didn't fit in this or that box exactly and are really gender expansive.
Yes.
And that, that's what I often think of. I think of all these people I knew and I'm like, oh, they were gender expansive. And colonialism just came and crapped on all of it and said, no, you
Mm-hmm.
must fit in this or that box. And when you're born, doctor will look at you and assign this gender on you, even if it doesn't align and even if it really hurts you, actually.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Yeah. Yeah. Like you were talking about, like people that you've known in the past. And that's the thing, right? Because these words have changed and our understandings have changed. I know when I was growing up, androgyny, that
Yeah.
was like the word. And then there were
Mhm.
some words that I'm not going to actually repeat because we know that they're offensive
Right.
now.
Right.
But there were some, yeah, there were some words that existed to try to
Mhm.
explain these, but they were almost never really appropriate words to use. So, okay, so we have gender, we have sex, sexuality. You want to take that?
I do. I want to say a little bit more about gender. As far as sometimes folks will misunderstand, I believe, misunderstand that when somebody comes to it's kind of nonsense, but I got training and I'm officially called like a gender therapist. It's nonsense because it's silly in that I'm this cisgender psychologist and I'm supposedly called a gender therapist. But really, I went through years of different experiences with a number of gender expansive folks across the US
Mhm.
and was under supervision that was damaging to some of the
Mm,
patients until I finally got to a place a few years ago where I was actually trained by somebody who is non-binary, gender non-binary,
mhm,
and they hosted the training for becoming a gender therapist, right?
mhm,
And so, and I've since taken another training by them around internal family system stuff and just really appreciate that training. But the reason that it's nonsense is because, like anybody, if they really do this appropriate studying, and actually everybody should be a gender therapist, right?
mhm,
So
mhm.
if we go to a therapist, they should be affirming of who we are. But I'll put that aside for a second and focus on the
You're getting into the trauma.
topic.
I hear you trying to get
I
there.
was. So what I was trying to say was basically that a lot of folks will say, okay, well, I didn't know when I was 4, or my child didn't know when they were 4 or something. Now they do and they're 18, or now they do and they're 20. And there's nothing that actually says that somebody had to have known. It's not like a weird, like, aha thing, right? Like some of the books and some of the literature and movies and stuff tell us. And that's great for knowing that there are expansive amount of experiences. And for some people, that is how it goes. But for some people, um, we don't know who their models were. We don't know if they were allowed to talk about those things, if they knew what that was. So there's a lot of different things. And then there's just some backwards literature around, um, what type of toys did you play with? What type of,
Oh, that's just bogus.
all
That's
that kind of stuff, right? Like, so what
yeah.
colors did you wear? Who did you hang out with? So some of that is like really, I believe, damaging and can put people in boxes.
You
But
really wanna
well,
talk about the trauma.
I
You're
do, I
just like
do.
yes, yes, you're trying to, like you're trying to do is dispel some of that right off the break, right? Like, so notice, here's what we can say. Notice that when we started this conversation, we were talking about people, right? Man, woman, transgender, non-binary people, which means clothes do not have a gender. Colors do not have a gender. Toys do not have a gender. Therefore, there's no such thing as a girl toy, a boy toy, right? Girl color, boy color, um, makeup that is just for girls, makeup that's for boys. And I know we market that way, right?
Mhm.
Like I can't like the fact that they'll do like men's kits
Yeah,
for things, and they'll be like, it's the man hair gel or something. Because what hair gel is supposed to be for women, that's just like, some things are just really ridiculous, right? Or the fact that like we can go into like even there's a gender tax, right? Years ago, I switched from razors that were marketed towards women to
mhm,
razors that were marketed towards men because they're cheap. The one marketed towards men are
exactly,
cheaper and higher quality.
exactly. Yeah,
Like, oh, I'm not gonna pay extra because you made it purple or pink. Like, I
yeah,
can buy this cool orange one and be
yeah.
happy. Um, so yes, yes, I like that you that you brought that up. Sexuality.
Yeah, so sexuality, right. So there are a number of different sexualities. I'm not privy to all of them. I know that there's gay, lesbian, bisexual, pansexual. There's a lot of different
Can
sexualities.
we break down what they mean? So I think that everyone probably knows what straight means. You're attracted to what you're considering the opposite sex.
Hmm.
Okay.
Hmm. Yeah, and
Bi, because yeah.
yeah, so bisexual means you might like, so bi in of itself, right? Like bicycle means two, right?
Mhm,
Tricycle means
mhm,
three, right? So bi is two, and then
mhm,
sexual, right? So you like two types of people. And then there's pansexual, and some people feel like they might prefer to say bisexual over pansexual,
mhm,
because when they say pansexual, meaning like any gender, they're in love with the person,
mhm.
that they're saying that a trans woman is not a woman. So they prefer to say bisexual because they're liking women and men.
Got it.
This
Got it.
is
And
an
then some
argument
people
I've heard,
no, no,
right?
I know.
And
And then some
yeah,
people wanna say pan because pan will be inclusive of people who are gender non-conforming or gender non-binary,
right.
right? Because non-binary means you and there's like a spectrum even with that, within that, that you're not boy, girl, man, or woman. You are maybe some type of mix or neither or both, right?
Mhm.
And so, um, if you say bi, that means that bi automatically assumes that there's only two
Mhm.
types of sexes or whatever.
And then with queer people, people who identify their sexuality as being queer, they are including the identity development component of being queer, and they could like all sorts of people. They
Mhm,
might just like one gender, they might like multiple, they may be fluid. And now people might be like, well, what's fluidity? So that means that somebody can be fluid like water, and they may be expansive and flexible in their feelings towards people, and that they might change in their sexual interests and their interests in general, because there's also sexuality, there's also romantic feelings as well. And so some people may say when we're talking about sexuality that they are asexual, that they don't have a sexual interest in people. Some people might say they are sexually interested in, let's say, just men or just masculine energy,
mm,
but romantically interested in masculine and feminine energy. So there is also like a difference sometimes for some people in romantic and sexual interests.
mhm, mhm. That was a lot, right? And
Mhm.
we didn't again, this is still just like some of the basic understandings, without too much depth, just trying to give people a survey of understanding. Okay, so I think that we've delivered what we've promised, and now we can go into the trauma.
Yeah, and we have a few more minutes, so I'll just kind of open this up and then we'll come back to it if folks find that of interest. But some of the traumas that we could talk about are misgendering, and people might misgender someone by calling them different pronouns, right? So for me, she, her pronouns,
Oh, we didn't do
right?
pronouns.
We
Mhm,
didn't, right. Okay, so that's right. I think we said we would, we started, and
mhm,
then I started talking about colonialism and totally forgot. So pronouns, right. So I introduced myself with my pronouns. It's like the basic thing that I could do to invite in.
mhm,
And the pronouns that I use are she, her pronouns. And then somebody might say, for example, they use they, them pronouns. And then another person might say he uses he, they pronouns, right? So everybody might be different. So that's why it's nice that we introduce it so we aren't assuming based on somebody's like voice or presentation
mhm,
meaning like how they look or how we think they look,
mhm.
um,
Our perception of what they look like,
our
right?
perception of what they look like. Uh-huh.
Yeah. And we're doing that so that we can then know how to refer to them in the most respectful way, right? So it's not usually directed at you because I'm never gonna use she or
Mhm,
her when I'm
mhm,
talking to you because I'm just gonna use your name, Dr. Jaharti, or I'm just gonna like talk to you.
mhm,
But it's when we're referencing you in another conversation, I might say my colleague, Dr. Jaharti, she da da da,
mhm,
or I might say my friend, whatever XYZ, they, right? I might
mhm.
say they for the rest of the time talking about them, because they use they, them pronouns. So it helps classify how we talk about them.
Right, right. Very good. Yeah, yeah, exactly. So if somebody is misgendered, that might be that we are injuring, assaulting, hurting them by saying that they are not who they are. We're
Mhm,
not acknowledging, you used the perfect word, I think, was like it's just a simple sign of respect, right? So
mhm.
if we don't do that, then it can actually be a trauma. It can definitely build up. And then if somebody's misgendered, meaning like they're called by different pronouns, somebody, sometimes people do it on purpose.
Often,
Yeah.
often people do it on purpose. So
Mhm.
again, I'm a cisgender woman, but I'm a cisgender Black woman. So that intersectionality, I have been misgendered. It hasn't happened in the past couple of years very often, but I'm also it's pandemic and like I'm not around
Mhm.
many people, right? But Black women get misgendered, right? And that is an aggressive act against
Mhm.
because especially the darker you are as a Black woman, the more likely you are to be gendered as male or as a man because there's like all these studies that shows that society perceives dark skin as masculine. Society has said that Black women are more masculine. We're not, right? But that is a racial misgendering that occurs very frequently in the Black community, and it's not us doing it to each other either. These are outward things that are happening. But yeah, misgendering is often on purpose. And sure, some people are like, oh, it's an accident, or you just didn't know. It happened and you don't know about this, right? And that's kind of why we're doing this episode to help people understand some of these differences so they can, change their actions a bit. After a while, when you are still making the same mistakes without
Mhm.
self-correction, then it does go back into it's no longer a mistake, right? Like you're doing this on purpose.
Exactly. So if somebody says, hey, my dead name or my name on my legal documents was X, Y, or Z,
Mhm.
um, or you happen to have seen a picture of them from before, right? Or
Mhm.
something like this, I hope that you'll take that with as a sacred thing and you
Mhm.
will not ever say that name and you
Mhm.
will not refer to that picture that they showed you or whatever.
Mhm.
Um, because if you really do value connection and respect, then you'll respect who they are and how they identify. So yeah, I do agree with you that that is such an aggressive act, right? So
Mhm.
yeah, dead naming somebody, calling them by their name that was assigned to them, that they
Mhm.
do not use, that does injure their heart, that does hurt them,
Mhm.
is a trauma. So if you, again, value connection and respect, then you'll use their name as they introduce themselves. And that's the cool part, is that we have an opportunity to say, how would you like me to refer to you? And they
Mhm.
can say, I'm so and so. And that's what we say. Then we say,
Mhm.
okay, you know, I will call you by Dr. Doughton. I will call you by Dr. Harchi, whatever you said.
Mhm. Mhm.
Um, so I think that that speaks a little bit to gender trauma. I want to talk a little bit about access,
Mhm.
right? So I I do work with folks where we write gender affirming letters for surgery.
Mhm.
These are medically necessary care, and I did a TikTok post a month ago or something like that,
Mhm.
and there was a lot of creepy feedback from that, a lot of aggression. I like that you
Mhm.
use that word, a lot of aggression, exactly. Um, and misunderstandings too, probably. And what happens is these are medically necessary care for these folks. However, a lot of times they're saying, I'm getting this pushback from medical systems not allowing me to get this care that I need, this
Mhm.
life-saving care. So that in of itself is a trauma. So you've worked your whole life to just be who you are, and now you finally are like an inch away from being able to be on a surgery wait list or a wait list for hormones or whatever,
Mhm.
and you get denied, or the systems are so weighed down that they're not calling you back.
Mhm.
So then there's like that sort of layered
Yeah.
stuff.
Or laws are being enacted to, I mean, we think about Texas and
Mhm.
Florida, right?
Yeah. Mhm.
Laws are being enacted to stop transgender people from existing,
Yeah.
essentially, right?
Mhm.
And to stop, I mean, there's like a don't say gay bill in schools in Florida. What? You know?
Mhm.
So, absolutely, that's traumatic, and I think that it can be confusing for people because these are things that they feel like are choices, like you're choosing to be a certain way, and these are, you can hide. If you wanted to, the thought is, well, you could hide, right? No one would have to know, no one needs to know your sexuality, no one needs to know that you're transgender or that you're gender nonconforming because you could just dress the way we think a whatever your gender should be, what we think it should be, air quotes. Um, and then you could just, go on with your life. But who else has to hide that way? Of course, it's traumatic. And we know that the suicide rates for people in the LGBTQ plus community are astronomical when they don't have gender affirming sexuality care, right?
Mhm.
Like, especially in the adolescence to early adulthood range.
That's right. And when we do connect people, validate, affirm,
Mhm.
provide affirming care, suicide rate, suicidal thoughts, substance abuse all goes down.
Mhm. Mhm.
So I'm happy you brought up those numbers. Folks can definitely ask us if they want to know more about these traumas. There's so many,
I
but
wanna
for
put one quick plug
yeah.
in. I know we're about to wrap up, I can hear it. Um, I just wanna say that there's work to be done, in the Black community because we have done a good job in some ways of rallying together and fighting against injustices, but we've done that for injustices for straight gender conforming people mostly. And so there is work that we need to do as a community, my community, to be expansive and understand that when we're fighting for the rights of Black people, that cannot exclude the LGBTQ plus community, that cannot exclude people with disabilities, right? We need to be inclusive and expansive within our community to support the needs of Black people in general. So I just wanted to put that plug in for. for that. So go ahead, we can finish wrapping up. Tell people where to find us.
So yeah, I will just share a little bit about what we talked about. We talked about everything from The Invisible Man Got the Whole World Watching and Inviting In to, gender expansiveness starting way before colonialism came in and messed it up. We talked, you shared with us, Dr. Dotton, about like a intro to how people are assigned at birth and the trajectory of gender. And then we talked a little bit about sexuality. Then we touched on trauma. So again, just let us know if you'd like to be involved with the discussion going on.
That's right. And you can find us in a few places. So again, the book that we just put in will be able to be located in our bookshop. Funds for that bookshop will help support this podcast because it does cost money to run a podcast. And it also helps support local bookstores so that they don't go out of business. So it has a dual purpose. You can find us on Instagram at Breaking the Couch. Please feel free to tag us, leave comments in our posts, share, like. We hate having to say that, but that's the way social media and the algorithms work, that if we can't reach the communities that need to hear these talks, then we aren't able to continue. You can find us on YouTube as well if you want more accessible language access for people who can't access auditory. You can share this with people on YouTube, and it has auto-generated captions, but then also Dr. Jaharchi spends a good chunk of her time making edits to the captions as well. Oh, and our website. If none of those are accessible to you, you can go to our website. You can leave a comment on our website. You can ask for topic ideas. You can ask questions, and you can decide whether you want to stay completely anonymous or if you want a shout out. You can also do requests to join us on the show and see if you have insight or input that you want to share. And you can leave voicemail if you join us through Spotify and Anchor. Those are things you can leave voicemails and messages.
If you are looking for a therapist for yourself or your child, you can visit our websites, playfullypsych.com or softheartpsychology.com.
We appreciate you joining us this week and can't wait till there's another opportunity to jump on the couch with you next week.